In 1192, at the Battle of Tarain, the invading forces of Muhammad Ghori shattered the reigning Rajput defenses. This single clash ended centuries of Rajput rule and redirected the entire political future of the Indian subcontinent. It also established a vicious new precedent. Over the next 300 years, the throne of Delhi became an object of such intense obsession that heirs would routinely murder their own fathers just to secure it. This greed was driven by cold economics. Delhi served as the unquestioned commercial hub of medieval India and held the exclusive right to mint the royal currency used across the region. This map shows the layout of the region's geography. Notice how the vast network of merchant paths and military supply lines all converge directly on this single node, Delhi. Whoever physically occupied this city controlled the flow of goods and the movement of armies across the entire territory. Occupying Bat Edzat's intersection meant possessing the wealth of an entire subcontinent. That geographic supremacy turned Delhi into a magnetic prize, sparking a 300-year saga where 5 ruthless dynasties vied for absolute control. The saga begins in 1206 with the Mamluks, or slave dynasty. Following Muhammad Ghori's death, his loyal general and former slave, Kutubuddin Aibak, seized power and began constructing the massive sandstone monuments that define the Delhi skyline to this day. His successor, Iltutmish, solidified the empire by officially moving the capital to Delhi and establishing the Ikta system, a formalized salary structure that paid military officers with land revenues to ensure their loyalty to the throne. The Mamluks successfully blocked external threats like Genghis Khan, but internal control relied on pure intimidation. Sultan Balban maintained order through a massive spy network and demanded his subjects treat him as a godlike figure. However, even the disciplined Ikta system and the psychological weight of the Qutub Minar failed to protect the dynasty from its own ranks. When the Mamluk leadership eventually grew physically weak, their own generals ignored the established hierarchy, murdering the infant heir to clear a path for the next claimant. Power passed to the Khilji dynasty through an act of betrayal. In 1296, Alauddin Khilji seized the crown by slitting the throat of his 70-year-old uncle and father-in-law. Alauddin launched a brutal military expansion deep into southern India. His armies systematically stripped rival kingdoms of their treasures, most notably looting the world-famous Kohinoor diamond from the fortress of Warangal. While he forced thousands to convert to Islam under threat of death, he also implemented a brilliant economic policy. Alauddin established strict, fixed market pricing across the empire, stabilizing the cost of daily goods and centralizing the state's wealth. But this era ended in total chaos. By 1320, Sultan Mubarak Shah was spending his reign drunk and frequently wandering the royal courts naked until his own general finally assassinated him. The Khiljis demonstrated that massive riches could be extracted through unyielding terror. However, that ruling style bred the very paranoia and instability that ultimately invited their own destruction. Next came the Tughlaqs, led by Muhammad bin Tughlaq, the confused sultan. To escape Mongol threats, he made the catastrophic decision to force the entire population of Delhi to abandon their homes and march hundreds of miles south to a new capital at Dalatabad. The migration was a logistical disaster that cost thousands of lives. To replace the lost wealth, he issued cheap brass coins instead of silver. This immediately crashed the economy as citizens began mass-producing counterfeit coins in their own homes. By 1398, these failures left a hollowed-out Delhi vulnerable to outside attack. The Mongol conqueror Timur seized the opportunity and marched his forces directly into the capital. Over 5 days, Timur orchestrated a total massacre. His soldiers looted the city's remaining reserves and killed up to 200,000 people, taking thousands hostage. Tughlaq's prioritization of theoretical shifts over physical border security converted a wealthy imperial capital into a graveyard. Timur's sack effectively erased the Sultanate's central authority for the next century. Delhi entered a long period of decay. The Sayyid dynasty took control, but their reach was staggeringly limited. At their lowest point, the Sultanate's borders shrank from a subcontinental empire down to a tiny circle spanning just 50 kilometers around the city. The Sayyids eventually surrendered control to the Lodis, the first Afghan dynasty to rule Delhi. They briefly stabilized the region, with Sultan Sikandar Lodi establishing the grand city of Agra as a new base of power. But the final sultan, Ibrahim Lodi, destroyed that stability with his extreme arrogance. He began executing his own ministers based on mere suspicion. This paranoia reached such a peak that his own uncle reached out to a foreign ruler named Babur, begging him to invade and take the throne. When a sultan targets his own inner circle to preserve his power, the loyalty holding the empire together evaporates. Ibrahim Lodi's own family chose the uncertainty of a foreign invasion over the certain death of remaining under his rule. This internal betrayal led to the year 1526. Babur arrived with advanced artillery and utterly crushed Ibrahim Lodi's forces at the Battle of Panipat. That single defeat terminated the 300-year reign of the Delhi Sultanate. In the resulting power vacuum, Babur established the foundations of the Mughal Empire. The Sultanate's legacy is defined by 5 dynasties that transformed India's architecture and centralized its fractured economy. They proved repeatedly that in the pursuit of the Delhi throne, political power will always supersede family blood. Those 3 centuries of conflict consolidated the scattered kingdoms of India into a single administrative engine. By 1526, Delhi stood as the recognized seat of total subcontinental power, leaving behind a complex machinery of control for the Mughals to inherit.